Hello and welcome to the Rays of Hope program brought to you by the Purchase Area Sexual Assault Center here in Paducah, Kentucky. I'm your host for today, Mary Foley, and I am so glad that you have joined us. An author once said, "Life is not measured by the breaths you take, but by the moments that take your breath away." And today we're going to be talking about the importance of breath literally and the power of good health. And here to help us do that are two very special guests I'd like to welcome to the show. Teresa Morris, the therapist for the Purchase Area Sexual Assault Center, and Nicole Brown from the Paducah Yoga Center. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. I'd like for you to take just a moment to just introduce yourself to the audience. Teresa, you've been on the program before, but still, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm Teresa Morris. Like you said, I'm a therapist at the Purchase Area Sexual Assault Center. I've been there for about 4 years, working with our clients.
And so you actually are starting a new service at the center, and that's
Yes.
part of what you're going to be talking about. Can you give us just a brief overview of that?
Sure. And the service you're speaking about is we are offering yoga classes to our clients, and that's essentially what we're here to talk about today is some yoga. About 2 years ago, I started seeing some of the importance of yoga work and breath work and relaxation for those who are experiencing depression and anxiety and some trauma symptoms, and did a little bit of research and wanted to provide this for our clients in our center.
And I'm so excited that you're here to talk about that today, because I think it's something that the community needs to know. So thank you for being here. And Nicole, this is your first time on the Rays of Hope program.
Yes,
Tell us a little bit about you and what you do at the Paducah Yoga Center.
Well, my name's Nicole Brown. I own Paducah Yoga Center. I opened it up in 2004 to welcome the community to an alternative type of exercise of getting healthy mentally as well as physically. I also am a wife of a beautiful husband and a mother of 2 daughters, and I just feel that with my experience with yoga, it's helped me be even a good, healthy member of community, of society, as well as a productive wife and mother as well. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's really that's an excellent point that you bring up, because what we're going to focus on today is how our health and how practices that relate to our health really do affect the way that we interact with others, the way that we interact, as you say, as a member of the community, part of the family, affects every aspect of who we are.
Yeah.
And I think that you both, sitting here as a yoga expert and as a mental health professional, would agree with me that Americans in general are very stressed out, very pulled, I guess, thin, if you would. And so I'm very excited to be talking about this topic with both of you. So again, thank you for being here. Let's get right to the point. In the first part of this show, we're going to be talking about just what is yoga. I know that in talking with both of you prior to the show, I realized I don't know that I have a good understanding of what it is, and I'm sure I'm not alone. So could you talk to me a little bit about what is yoga?
Well, like we shared before we started the show, Teresa asked me if I was nervous, and I said, no, I'm practicing my yoga. I can tell you first and foremost by personal experience, yoga is a tool for self-awareness. For instance, I was aware that I was getting a little nervous, and self-empowering to decide, to choose. Do I want to continue tensing up, or do I want to relax with a breath and choose to not continue down the path of stress?
I see.
Through the body positions, particularly that I teach, Hatha Yoga, H-A-T-H-A, is a type of yoga that specifies body positioning, postures that are challenging and in a way a practice ground. Obviously, if you found your hamstring very tight, you would kind of simulate daily stress in a way. So instead of going further into stress, of perhaps stretching a feeling you have in your hamstring, you have the choice to stop and take a few breaths and just sit with where you're at and decide, do you want to go further in stress, or again, pause, take a deep breath, and either come out of a position, walk away from whatever is causing stress, or see if you can manage coming at it mindfully to actually progress. And if your goal is to find a longer hamstring, then how are you going to come about that? Same as, like I'm saying, using this as a practice ground of daily life stresses.
So I hear you saying, Nicole, and Teresa, feel free to interject at whatever point you're comfortable. I hear you saying that yoga is a practice, is a tool to sort of springboard into lots of different things. Mindfulness, focus, strength, health, and you do that in a variety of ways. Is that a good summary of what you're trying to say?
Thank you.
Okay, so Teresa, you had mentioned that you had done some research, and that led you to make some decisions. Can you talk to us a little bit about what led you to the research that you looked at and why you chose yoga for the center?
Sure. I started my own yoga practice about 5 years ago, and saw the benefits for myself. You know, felt the benefits of for myself, of what I was feeling more comfortable in my body, more aware of what's going on, maybe a little bit stronger and a little bit more flexible as well too. And I thought, this would be a really great thing to share with those who are experiencing some anxiety of what I see, in my daily practice at work. And so I began to do some research from there of what that meant. I found that there has been some research with individuals who have experienced trauma and the physical effects that they feel, as well as the emotional and cognitive effects that they feel from yoga. That it slows your heart rate down. If your heart rate has increased, it helps bring about a state of relaxation, to be able to sleep at times when there's some a lack of sleep that goes along with feeling traumatized. But also just to be able to increase self-awareness of what's happening in your body.
And is it I guess the opinion of both of you, both experts in your own right, in different approaches to this, you as the mental health professional, you as somebody that's been practicing and teaching yoga for many years, have you found that that many people aren't aware of what is causing them stress and how it's affecting their body? Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
I would agree with that, and again, utilizing the body postures simply, like I've mentioned before, just on a physical level. You definitely start paying attention to how your body feels when you're moving it and stretching it and strengthening it. And I personally have experienced even more self-awareness just by that alone, to notice, like I said, when my body's stressing out. But have I answered your question?
Yes, you've done an excellent job. So if people aren't aware that they are maybe stressed or anxious and they come into your yoga class, how do you go about pointing out, oh, maybe that tight neck is a place that you're carrying stress, or maybe that headache is related to stress? What is that process like when people come into your center? How do you direct them to that knowledge, I guess?
One of the, I want to say, the sweetest examples to see someone have a eureka of how they're holding their tension is in their tongue. One of the suggestions in your posture is that, okay, let's say we're going to stand here with our arms up overhead. What is your tongue doing? Can you allow your tongue to drop down away from the roof of their mouth? And you see their faces go, oh my gosh, how did you know my tongue was pressed up against the roof of my mouth? That in itself can be just a world of knowledge of how how to connect self-awareness of even just on a physical level where you carry your stress. So things like that is a beginning step of how I personally have brought people to observe themselves and how they carry their stress. And then logically everyone wants to admit, I've lots of tension here. Some of the positions particularly are asking for the antagonist muscle or the opposite muscle to contract, so that particularly this antagonist muscle is down here, these two. When you contract this one, these have to soften. Same as in the quads and the hamstring. To contract the front of the thigh, your hamstring will soften. So these are ways to come at it physically, to relieve the stress, but even more so to have some kind of tool. Like people say, I'm tense, what do I do? Do that. So there's a lot of anatomy education too that I utilize to help empower people just even about their bodies simply. And so it brings a lot more self-awareness.
Well, and I would imagine that as you're learning about the body, that the natural leap would be there is a mind-body connection.
Yes.
Can you talk to me about that mind-body connection?
Well, I don't know if you've observed in yourself that there's usually a commentary that you might have going on in your mind when you are doing things. And during yoga practice, when you're doing a body position, like earlier I said you have your hamstring crying out, that I'm encouraging you to stop and breathe and observe maybe your tongue. But even most of the time I don't mention really the internal dialogue till further down. I've seen the person over a few months, and then I'll come in and ask them to observe once they've gone first to their breath and observe how's their breath rolling. And that is the link between our body and our mind. The breath surpasses, and like Teresa had mentioned too, and it's a very common technique even in psychotherapy to utilize breathing exercises to start tapping into what the mind is doing. So that would be the next level of bringing awareness to the body, then into the breath, and then behind the breath and what the mind is doing. And like I said earlier, just as you have observed where there's tension in the body, you might observe where there is dialogue in the mind. And what is the mind's habits of what it's saying? We can acknowledge physically, because other people see it with us, the tension in our shoulders, like you mentioned. But internally, we're we're left alone with those thoughts. And in some instances, I'm understanding from your all's intent of this program, going straight to the mind stuff is a little too much at first, especially if there is things you don't want to think about. So the body work is a medium to then slowly and safely and compassionately come into the internal world of what's going on. And with the guidance of, I'm just so thrilled that Teresa's doing this, with the guidance and her expertise of the mental field. I think that this is a great beginning grounds to, maybe you can't quite get in there with someone to help them get there. This is a way to bring them to looking at themselves.
Very well said. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For explaining that, because I think we're all aware that there is a body-mind connection, and but maybe we don't take the time, especially in our busy lives, to stop and listen to our body, what it's doing, what our mind is saying. Teresa, there's just a few minutes before the break, but what I would like for you to just maybe talk briefly about is, do you find that people are afraid of yoga or are nervous because they don't understand it?
Yes, I do find that when I talk with clients about yoga and why we do yoga or offer it at the center, there's some anxiety there because they're not aware of what it is. And a lot of things I hear from people are things such as, I'm not very flexible, or I'm not very strong, I can't do that. And one of the things I love about yoga is that you don't have to be very flexible, or you don't have to be very strong, or in the shape that you feel like you have to be in. Yoga is starting where you are in your body and being able to work from there. And you can see the progress that's made, and you can feel that progress that's made that develops along with some of that self-awareness. So I think that's very important. You don't have to be physically fit to come. I also, people I think, I hear from people that they're unsure about what is yoga, what is this that they're practicing, and what it is that we offer is breath work and the body postures to bring about self-awareness.
So what I don't hear you saying, before we take a break, what I don't hear you saying is that yoga is a particularly related to a particular religion or spiritual orientation. That the yoga that you're talking about is a body work, breath work, becoming aware of what your thoughts are, how that's affecting your body.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I do think that is a misconception around
That's
here
true.
that I know that I have heard is that, well, that's not my spiritual orientation, or I'm not into the roots of yoga, and so people back away. What would you say to that?
I would say to that, if somebody came to me with that concern, that yoga's not a religion. It's not formed in a religion, and that sometimes people may have a spiritual impact of yoga, but that's not, and that may be a side effect. But I think that yoga can be practiced as a form of self-awareness and self-enhancement. Therefore,
An exercise.
an exercise, and that may create a spiritual experience for them, but that's not.
Meaning, as I focus on what I value,
Exactly.
I draw strength from that.
Yes.
Yes.
So if I draw strength from a specific prayer or a specific verse, or then I draw strength from that,
Yes.
and that's where that spiritual experience then comes into play. That's not led by the instructor.
No,
No.
it's a very personal experience, an empowering experience to what does, well, use you as an example, that was beautiful. What does Mary feel when she's saying her prayer? I mean, that is enhancing the truth of you. And they're just, like I said, it's a practice ground to really strengthen who is Mary. That's it.
Okay.
It's very personal.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're
Thank you
welcome.
so much. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk specifically about the effect of stress on the body, the effect of trauma on the body, and how yoga and its practice can help alleviate some of those symptoms. You will not want to miss this, no matter where you are or what your stress is. When you watch this program, I do feel that you will have some tools necessary to help you cope in a more healthy way. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Rays of Hope program. Our guests today are Teresa Morris from the Purchase Area Sexual Assault Center and Nicole Brown from the Paducah Yoga Center. And today we are talking about the importance of yoga and the overall health benefit that practice will provide. So thank you both for being here again today. I tell you, you've given us a great overview of yoga and the importance of that practice for the mental and physical health of us. But what I would really like to talk about in this next half is something that I think everybody can relate with, and that's just a lifestyle often of stress. And the way that often looks is symptoms of anxiety, depression, and I'd like for both of you just to talk about how can yoga help those symptoms.
Okay.
Well, like you said, we live in a society full of stress, and sometimes stress is not always bad, but sometimes it feels very overwhelming. In terms of anxiety and depression and how that's making us feel. And what yoga can do is offer some relief from some of that stress, whether it's through some breathing exercises and that anxiety feeling in your chest or in your stomach, and being able to become aware of where you're holding that tension and where you're holding that anxiety. It gives you tools or things to do to be able to relieve that, even if that tool is just that simple awareness of, oh, I'm holding my breath right now, or I'm feeling anxious right now, and then and allowing your body to release some of that. For depression, feeling depressed, yoga also can help bring some elevation to your mood by dealing with some of that stress, whether it's through the postures, the body postures, and the exercises that you do to relieve some stress that's building in your muscles, building in your body, or if it's the relaxation that comes with yoga that helps relieve some of that too.
Sure. Excellent job. Okay. Yes. I'm also wondering if just the idea of having a tool or tools brings a sense of empowerment or control that in and of itself helps reduce anxiety. When you feel in control of something, it seems to help. Do you find that is the case in terms of people coming to your center, maybe that they are stressed out or they are feeling that tightness in the chest?
Yeah. Two thoughts about the term of control, or really ultimately the term choice of tools. It reminds me of how you would help a child decide, or give them tools to decide, or give them choices versus this is what you need, and they're kind of resistant. Well, how about this? They get a choice. But particularly, I have had a student who's gone off to college, so it was a high school student finishing out his senior year, and had shared with me so beautifully how he utilized his tool of yoga, of self-awareness, of being able to stop and relax his body, drop his tongue, and breathe when he was in his exams, and came back just excited to say, I couldn't think of an answer, and I stopped and I remembered what you said, and I relaxed and I took a deep breath, and the answer came to me. And I was so thrilled to hear that he had that tool. Not only does he had that tool, but he has that tool to take him into college, and how, again, like you said, empowering is that he has that tool to choose, to be able to stop and take a breath, and he finds that he knows the answer to his test, or he knows what to do. It's just allowing that space to happen.
Well, and I think you both talk of an excellent point in that sometimes stress and anxiety and all of the things that means for all different people, it means something different for each of us. It is a mental block. It does shut us down, Have you found that to be the case, either one of you?
Yes, I find that a lot. One, in my own personal experience, the more I'm stressed, the more it's hard to communicate what's going on inside or outside. But I also find this in our practice at the center, in that when you're overwhelmed with all of these sensations and this tension and this stress in your body, it's hard to figure out where it's happening and what's happening. And I do find that when people become aware of what is happening and being able to name it and being able to label it and have something to do about it, brings that sense of empowerment, brings that sense of relief.
I think that just even that chain, being able to figure out what it is and put a name with it, and then have a tool in place to do something about it. Goodness, if we could apply just that framework to every aspect of our lives, we would certainly improve. So we just have a few moments left. Is there one, and I'm going to show my ignorance here because I don't know a lot about yoga, but is there one or two very concrete tools that viewers could take away from the program today in terms of something they could practice to bring some of that control to them?
I think becoming aware of what's going on in your body is I think we have the tools inside of us, and sometimes we think that we don't. And I think just becoming aware of your breath, the way it feels, the way it flows, and where you're breathing into it can be very useful.
So Teresa, when you say being aware of your breath, are you? I'm thinking, okay, if I'm watching and I'm listening to that, are you talking about being aware if I'm holding my breath, being aware if I'm tightening up, being aware of if I'm taking shallow breath or a big full breath? Is that what you mean?
That's exactly what I mean, of just being able to bring your attention to how you are breathing and where you're breathing and the way it feels inside, whether you're holding it or whether it's rapid or whether it's steady and calm, wherever it is bringing your awareness to it. And just keeping your awareness there for a few moments can bring a sense of control and focus.
Well, I'm thinking about just the physiological aspects, like you said, some education on that, because you can't be two states at one time. You can't be anxious and calm. You can't be happy and sad. You know, so when you bring some of that breath and you're going to change, there's going to be the opposite, like you were talking about. So if I'm stressed and I'm in the car and I'm having some road rage, then I can be aware of that and do some things differently.
I was also going to add that after we've observed what type of breath the body is having, and we've already touched a little bit, it's linked to usually what the mind is doing. And instead of saying mind, stop saying those stressful things or worries of tomorrows, you know. The best thing to do is to just come into the now. And I hear a lot of part of myself and assume other people, how am I supposed to think of now when I've got 10,000 other things I got to get done by the end of the day? But I found that having a steady breath is what gets all those things done. Like smoother than I ever imagined, because I'm present with each task at hand, and the next just comes. So my personal technique I would encourage is not only the tool of observing self, observing the body, then observing the breath, but what do you do when you observe your breath shallow is we've all smelled something pleasurable, is what I like to bring that analogy of a sweet smelling flower, and just what that feels like to smell. You notice your eyes tend to roll in the back of your head, your throat opens, or your tongue even drops, so that you're like allowing that essence to swirl in your taste buds, and you almost even open your ears a little bit. So that's a nice tool to imagine you're just inhaling a beautiful scent, and exhale, you're allowing it to just fill your sinus cavities, I guess is what we really are doing, and enjoying that on the exhale, letting it fill our body and inhaling the essence. So that's a beautiful tool to try, because that's what I hear myself. Well, I'm noticing I'm stressed. What do I do? You know, what is my little tool that I can use? And recognize tools are useful, and when they're not useful, we don't cling to them. We let them go. And maybe there's a different tool. So these other things to recognize. Yoga might be a great thing to use certain techniques at the beginning, and then different tools will be used another time, and different tools. So this is not a truth, you know, just because it worked for Mary doesn't mean it'll work for Teresa. Right. So I want to make that point that it's very personal. I mentioned that before, even in what works. The flour might not work for someone else, you know. They might need to think of some freshly baked butter cake or something.
I appreciate that analogy. That's something that we can all relate to. Thank you both so much for being here. I appreciate your time so much, and appreciate the tools that you have given us today.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you joining us, and as always, I hope that you will look for us, the Rays of Hope program. If you need more information about the Purchase Area Sexual Assault Center, you can visit us online at www.paysackentucky.org. And of course, you see our 800 number on the screen. If we can be of any service to you, we would be happy to assist you in any way that we can.